Good morning. Good to have you with us. I'm Joe Fryer.
And I'm Savannah Sellers. Thanks for joining us on Thursday morning. We're going to get started this morning with the multiple legal battles facing former President Donald Trump, which are continuing to pile up ahead of this year's general election.
Mr. Trump was up early this morning, meeting with supporters in New York ahead of his return to the courtroom as his hush money criminal trial continues. Well, that's happening about 225 miles to the south. The Supreme Court of the United States will hear arguments about Mr. Trump's bid for presidential immunity from prosecution over alleged efforts to overturn the 2020 election. That all centers on another criminal case, the one known as the federal election interference case. And on top of all of that, Mr. Trump could also face more potential legal jeopardy. That's after an Arizona grand jury indicted 18 people for their alleged role in trying to overturn the 2020 election result in that state. 11 Republican officials are named for their part in the so-called fake electors scheme. That's when they submitted a document to Congress falsely declaring that Donald Trump had won the state of Arizona in 2020. Now, Mr. Trump was not charged in that case, but he was named as an unindicted co-conspirator. Arizona's attorney general vowed to prove the crimes were committed beyond a reasonable doubt.
I will not allow American democracy to be undermined. The plot to violate the law must be answered for, and I was elected to uphold the law of this state. The scheme, had it succeeded, would have deprived Arizona's voters of their right to have their votes counted for their chosen president.
We've got team coverage from New York to Washington as we cover all of the legal cases involving the former president today. We kick things off this hour with NBC's Katie Fang, who's outside the Supreme Court in Washington, and our legal analyst Angela Senadella here in studio. Good morning to both of you. Katie, let's start with you and that Supreme Court hearing about Mr. Trump's claim of presidential immunity. Set the scene for us. What's expected today, and do we have any idea how quickly we could get a decision?
Well, that is the magic question, Joe. The last one, when can we expect a decision? But in order to get across that finish line, we have to have the oral arguments occur first. That is going to take place this morning. And you know what's interesting, Savannah and Joe, is normally a case makes it to the Supreme Court once there's been a conviction, once there's been a verdict, once there's been a decision. But in this instance, as you all know, this is as a result of the D.C. federal election interference case that was brought by special counsel Jack Smith. Judge Tanya Chunkin, a federal judge, deciding that Donald Trump does not have presidential criminal immunity. As a result, before we can even get anything going in terms of a trial, though, the Supreme Court taking up the decision of whether or not Trump does have this alleged criminal immunity for acts that were committed in the scope of his office during his presidency. And that's the key language, guys, that we want to focus on, whether or not these were acts that were committed during the scope of his presidency that would give him immunity. But the one thing that I'm going to be looking out for today that I think a lot of people are, is whether or not the Supreme Court says, you know what, we're not going to make a blanket decision. He either does have it or he doesn't have it in terms of immunity. Will this Supreme Court say we want the trial court judge to make a decision on an act-by-act basis as to whether or not a certain act has immunity or another one does not? And so once these oral arguments have concluded, we may get a decision as late as June, which obviously may have an impact on all of the pending criminal prosecutions of Donald Trump.
Angela, let's bring you in here. I want to ask you what Katie was just touching on there. Is there a chance that this just sort of gets sent from the Supreme Court back to a lower court? It's kind of a processy question, but then also walk us through the legal basis here for Mr. Trump's immunity claim.
Yes, first, absolutely, there's a chance that it gets kicked back to the lower court. So that's really only a decision the Supreme Court can make today about how far they want to make this decision. Now, in terms of Trump's basis, so he's saying everything that he did, that he's being accused of in this D.C. case, was within the scope of his official acts of his presidency. Now, the second part of that, though, is he's claiming that any of those official acts of a president should be totally immune from criminal prosecution. His argument is that presidents have to make huge decisions every single day, split-second ones of massive importance. And if they have to be worried every single time that the next incoming presidency, that their political Department of Justice could then prosecute them for their decisions, that would just cause problems for their ability to make the decisions in the best interests of the country.
Katie, let's turn to this new case out of Arizona, the thing we weren't really expecting this morning. Walk us through this indictment. Who are some of the big names, and there are some big names mentioned here, what are they being charged with?
Yeah, so Joe, there are 18 co-defendants that have now been indicted by a state grand jury in the state of Arizona for their roles in their own efforts to overturn the 2020 presidential election results. There was a fake elector scheme that we've all heard about. It's been mentioned not only in Georgia and Fulton County, but as well as in Michigan and in Nevada. Those are the other states that are prosecuting individuals that were working as a, quote, fake slate of electors in order to ensure that Donald Trump remained president of the United States and not the lawfully elected Joe Biden. I want to read to you just very quickly some language from the indictment so you get a flavor of what this case is about. They say that these individuals prevented the lawful transfer of the presidency, keeping President Trump in office against the will of Arizona voters. That is the crux of the allegations. But if you look at the front page, Joe, of that indictment, there are some blacked out names, and those redacted names are actually Jenna Ellis and Rudy Giuliani and former White House Chief of Staff Mark Meadows. If those names are familiar, they're also being prosecuted in Fulton County. And so these allegations are being now sought against these individuals. And according to the Arizona GOP, they are claiming that it's, quote, political in nature, and they vow to fight back on behalf of these Republicans. But we'll have to see how the judicial process plays out for all of these defendants.
Angela, we start throwing around a lot of words when we're talking about all these different cases that a lot of people aren't really used to hearing. So just tell us, legally speaking, what does unindicted co-conspirator mean, which is what Mr. Trump is named as in this one?
So, frankly, it doesn't mean all that much yet. Like, if he didn't have all these other real criminal charges against him, I would say this could be a cause of concern. The real issue is that at any time he could be charged. There could be an indictment. If you're a co-conspirator, that means that they are looking into you, they're investigating you. But you're either charged or you're not. So at this point, he's not facing charges here, whereas he is across the rest of the country.
All right, Katie and Angela, thank you both. Appreciate it.
Meanwhile, on another legal front for the former president here in New York, court will be back in session this morning for his hush money trial.
We could get a decision from the judge as soon as today on the gag order issue. Does he think the former president violated that order, which bars him from attacking jurors and witnesses? If so, what's the punishment?
As Kim says, David Pecker is expected to take the stand again today in court. He's the former National Enquirer publisher, and he testified earlier this week describing the so-called catch and kill tactics used to take down negative stories about Mr. Trump. NBC News correspondent Rahima Ellis joins us now from outside the courthouse in Lower Manhattan with a preview. Good morning. So let's get started with this anticipated gag order decision. Both sides made their cases on Tuesday to Judge Juan Merchan. Former President Trump has continued, though, to discuss the trial on Truth Social, even as that's unfolding. Bring us up to speed on the arguments that were made and what punishment could look like here.
Well, the prosecution is alleging that Donald Trump has made several violations of the gag order. As you point out, it prohibits him from attacking witnesses or jurors or court officers or family members of the court. And they say that he has violated this in his speech as well as in his tweets and retweets. And one of the more explosive moments of talking about him reposting a tweet came up on Tuesday, just before trial began, and that is the jurors were not in the courtroom for this. And the judge asked Donald Trump's attorney whether or not it was an exact retweet. Come to find out that it was not, that Donald Trump added some words. And at that point, the judge said, so he is manipulating these tweets. The attorney, the defense attorney, said he objected to the word manipulating. At that point, the judge said, I have to tell you, you are losing credibility with this court. He repeated, you are losing credibility with this court. Not something that any attorney wants to hear. If the judge makes a decision that he finds Donald Trump has violated the gag order, the prosecution is asking that he be fined $1,000 per violation. So far, it's 10, perhaps 11 alleged violations, so that could be anywhere from $10,000 to $11,000. That's what the prosecution would like to see happen. They have not called, we should point out, for any kind of incarceration of the former president. They just want him to stop making what they say are attacking remarks about people. Guys?
So, Rahima, David Pecker is still on the witness stand when court is back today. Day number 3 on the stand for him. Jurors already got a firsthand account of the personal relationship he says he's had with Trump over the years. Recap highlights of his testimony so far and then what we can expect today.
Well, he pointed out how they are very good friends and that they have known each other since the 1980s. And he was also someone, I think, who's very important, as we've had our legal scholars who've been pointing out this, in terms of setting up the kind of relationship that Trump had and also the kind of businessman he was. David Pecker said that Donald Trump was essentially someone who was micromanaging, that he was aware of every single aspect of his business. And that's going to be extremely important going forward. In addition, we might get through direct examination from David Pecker today, then it would be cross. And our folks who are inside the courthouse tell me that the next witness who might come up might be Stormy Daniels.
All right, Rahema, thank you so much.
In the Middle East, Hamas released an undated video showing American-Israeli hostage Hersh Goldberg Poland alive. It is the first time we've seen him since his abduction more than 6 months ago. NBC News international correspondent Raf Sanchez has the latest.
Shalom.
This undated Hamas video giving a first glimpse of American-Israeli hostage Hersh Goldberg Poland in captivity. The fact he survived October 7th is almost miraculous. This video shows him being kidnapped from the Supernova Music Festival, his left arm badly damaged by a grenade. Video shows the 23-year-old's hand is gone, but he appears otherwise uninjured. He's one of 5 Americans believed to be alive in Hamas captivity. Mom, Dad, Libby, and Orly, I love you so much and miss you so much, and I think of you every day that I'm here, he says. His parents, Rachel and John, calling on Israel and Hamas to reach a ceasefire agreement.
We're relieved to see him alive, but we are also concerned about his health and well-being.
We heard your voice today for the first time in 201 days, and if you can hear us, I am telling you, we are telling you, we love you, stay strong, survive.
In the Oval Office, President Biden also meeting for the first time with a freed U.S. hostage. 4-year-old Abigail Edan, the youngest American kidnapped by Hamas, was released last year. But Israel says 133 hostages are still in Gaza, at least 36 of them confirmed dead. And Hersh Goldberg Poland's parents have been passionate advocates for their release.
What do you feel?
Speaking to Lester several times since October 7th.
How do you walk through a nightmare that you cannot wake up from ever?
A family in agony, but not despair.
One line that we say every single day in our house, and someone gave it to us in a sticker because we say it so much: hope is mandatory.
Raf Sanchez, NBC News, Tel Aviv.
Well, President Biden renewed the United States' commitment to Israel by signing a long-awaited foreign aid package into law on Wednesday. The $95 billion bill, passed with bipartisan support, will fund aid to Ukraine, Taiwan, and Israel, while also providing relief to Gaza. Included in that package is also a controversial ban on the social media platform TikTok. NBC News Chief White House correspondent Peter Alexander has more.
With Ukraine struggling to fend off Russia's relentless military assault, new American weapons are finally on the way after President Biden signed that nearly $100 billion foreign aid package.
It's a good day for world peace. It's going to make America safer. It's going to make the world safer.
The announcement comes after a 6-month-long White House effort to approve more aid. The delay caused by conservative Republicans who threatened to oust House Speaker Mike Johnson if he supported it. Multiple officials tell NBC News the president broke the logjam by directing aides to court Johnson, privately making clear to him the consequences of inaction. Still, the delay, officials here acknowledge, has put Ukraine at a disadvantage. The final package that the Senate passed easily includes $60 billion for Ukraine, $8 billion to support allies like Taiwan, and more than $26 billion for Israel, some of it for humanitarian aid for Palestinians facing famine.
Israel must make sure all this aid reaches the Palestinians in Gaza without delay.
The president's signature also triggers a countdown clock for TikTok, giving its Chinese parent company 9 months to sell the social media platform or face a ban in the U.S. TikTok is already vowing legal challenges.
We are confident and we will keep fighting for your rights in the courts. The facts and the Constitution are on our side.
Even though the president today signed that bill declaring TikTok a national security threat, his campaign says it plans to keep using the app at least through the election before any possible ban could take effect. Back to you.
All right, Peter Alexander, thank you.
Now to those tense protests over the war in Israel growing larger this morning, leading to clashes with school officials, even law enforcement on several college campuses across the country. Earlier this morning in Boston, there was a large police presence at a protest near Emerson College. The scene in these images shared by Working Mass. That's the labor outlet of the Democratic Socialists of America in Massachusetts.
The Los Angeles Police Department is continuing to patrol the University of Southern California today after 93 people were arrested during protests there. And tensions continue to escalate at New York's Columbia University between the administration and pro-Palestinian protesters. House Speaker Mike Johnson made a visit to the school yesterday.
That's where we find NBC News senior national correspondent Stephanie Goss this morning. Stephanie, good morning. So Columbia said student protesters had agreed to take down, quote, a significant number of tents. What's the latest there this morning? I also know you've been speaking with students there. What are you hearing?
Yeah, you know, Joe, they did take down some tents and they agreed to stop harassment and they were given another 48 hours, but that deadline runs out tonight at midnight. And the students who I spoke with said they aren't going anywhere. Meanwhile, as you note, tension is spreading and growing on campuses across the country. It has led to some very dramatic confrontations with police and dozens of arrests.
House Speaker Mike Johnson and other Republican lawmakers visited Columbia University's campus yesterday, and he met with the school's president and also Jewish students. What came out of those meetings, and where do things go from here?
Well, one of the things that they told us, the Jewish students who they met with, Savannah, is that they're scared. They recounted incidents of assaults that they've experienced, epithets that have been shouted at them, and that dovetails with things that I have heard from students really leading back to October on this campus. But it doesn't tell the entire story, because we also spoke with a faculty member, a Jewish faculty member here, who said that she actually had her Seder dinner, her Passover dinner, in the encampment, and that what's going on in that encampment is peaceful protest against the Israeli state, and that they should be supported, and that their freedom of speech should be supported by the president here. Now, those calls for the ouster of President Manoush Shafik, well, the Board of Trustees here has come out in support of her, saying she is doing that ever-important thing, striking the balance between freedom of speech and also protecting students on campus from harassment and intimidation.
All right, Stephanie, thank you so much.
Well, on their third attempt, members of the Arizona House of Representatives passed legislation to repeal the 1864 abortion ban that was upheld by the state Supreme Court earlier this month. Under the state's Civil War-era ban, it's set to go into effect as early as June 8th. Performing or receiving an abortion is a felony and carries a sentence of 2 to 5 years in prison.
The measure passed after 3 state House Republicans joined Democrats in voting for the measure. Now it goes to the state Senate, which is expected to vote in favor of the repeal as early as next week. Time for your morning news now. Weather forecast. Some pretty intense storms will impact the middle of the country the next few days.
Angie Lastman is here with the details. Hi, Angie. Good morning.
Hi, good morning, guys. We've got severe storms in the picture, not just today, but the next couple of days. This is a multi-day threat for us. And a lot of it is focused across the middle of the country. And that's already where you see some of these thunderstorms firing up. But as the day goes on, of course, the recipe and all the ingredients that you need for some of those really strong storms will be there. Let's talk about how that plays out between now and tonight. We're going to watch this system kind of lift to the north. It's a warm front. Ahead of that, you'll notice all of the thunderstorm activity, some of which we're already seeing this morning. We'll see that severe risk stretched across parts of Texas all the way as far north as Nebraska. It looks like the greatest chance for some of those stronger storms is going to be places like Garden City to Wichita Falls. But we do have, of course, that chance to see some of those stronger tornadoes. And what's most concerning is especially after dark. So after the sun goes down, we know how much more dangerous nocturnal tornadoes are. And those are on the table today, not to mention they could be quite strong, some of them. EF2 or higher, again, that same bullseye of the area, but from Texas all the way up into portions of Nebraska, that's where we'll see that risk of tornadoes at all. Now, moving ahead to tomorrow, we wrap up our work week on Friday with some of that heavy rain working into the upper Midwest, but that's actually not what's most concerning. It's the next day, the next kind of repeat round of what we have as far as severe storms that's going to now be from parts of Texas all the way up as far north as Des Moines. That's where we'll see the chance for some of those stronger stronger storms. And you can see how expansive this is with all hazards possible. So the large hail, the strong tornadoes, and those gusty, damaging winds are going to be possible, especially places like Kansas City metro area and Omaha metro area. That's where we're looking for that best chance of some of those stronger tornadoes, again, for the afternoon hours of your Friday and into your Saturday. And if I sound like a broken record, it's because, I mean, we've got multiple days of the same kind of threat that we're going to watch, and this goes into your Saturday. So afternoon plans, evening plans for your Saturday. During the day, you're going to want to make sure you have a way to get those alerts, because once again, we start to see a new storm system take shape across parts of the southern plains, and the tornado potential will be there. It ramps up as the day goes on, and once again, Kansas City to Oklahoma City, that's the best chance for it, so that's where the enhanced risk is. But notice how expansive this is from Michigan all the way down to Texas, guys. We're going to be watching this as we go to into our weekend, not to mention some heavy rain possible as well.
Thanks for watching. Stay updated about breaking news and top stories on the NBC News app or follow us on social media.